You're listening to Parasearch Radio, news, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. Parasearch UK Radio. Parasearch Radio, broadcasting to the UK and beyond.
The views and opinions expressed by presenters and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Parasearch Radio or its affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised. You're listening to Kerry Greenaway and Mark Manley on the Dark Mirror Paranormal Show, only on Parasearch Radio.
Good evening and welcome to the Dark Mirror Paranormal Show. My name is Kerry Greenaway, in case you didn't know, and I am joined in the studio by my lovely co-host, Mark Manley. Good evening, Mark.
Hey, lovely. What are you after?
Well, you're moving, so I'm after friendship.
It's been nice because
I want trips to Yorkshire.
Oh, you can come up Yorkshire anytime you like.
Because you know how I love Yorkshire.
Hey, you're welcome up there anytime. You know that. We told you we'd help you with everything. Might cost you a nice wink.
Ooh, won't cost me a thing. I like the sound of that. Anyway.
Oh dear.
So, apart from packing like a madman, are you okay?
Yes, been sorting out my job up there and making sure that they stick to what I'm supposed to be doing. Monday to Friday, no weekends, finish early on a Friday because of the radio.
Excellent. My dog is having a right old scratch. I do.
I'm wondering what your dog's doing. All I can hear is he's like lots of
I know,
padding.
he's having a right little scratch. Bless him.
Right.
Anyway.
Yes.
So this week, it's been an interesting week this week on research.
I bet it has actually.
It's been quite fascinating because we're looking at ghosts in the machine. Now, when we think of hauntings, we usually think in traditional terms, don't we, Mark? You know, haunted houses, manifestations, poltergeists, knockings, you know, all the usual chain rattling, groaning, all that sort of stuff.
That's enough about your back room.
But, we also come across things like battery drains, power drainings on our equipment, don't we?
Yeah, I've experienced battery drains more than a few times on more than a few investigations. In fact, pretty much every investigation you've been on, I've had a battery drain or something.
Yes. Now, this sets me thinking, and you know what happens when my little brain starts going into overdrive on thinking about things.
We're all knackered, yeah.
Yeah. I'll take you down paths that you wouldn't even, necessarily think.
And we all know about your batteries draining, but we won't go there.
No, let's not go there on that one.
That's enough about AK2 meters, though, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get on with the show.
But not just that about power drains on investigations. There's also, from the surface look, seems to be, and I'm using my words very, very carefully on this one, more cases of spirit communicating in other ways, like through modern technology, like our TVs, our computers, our mobile phones. Or is there? Ooh. Bass drop. Now we all know, we've all come across with EVPs on voice recorders when we're out investigating. In fact, that's one of the main tools that people use when they're investigating is your voice recorder.
This is very true. Were you heard that one from Hockley Woods with that little girl saying, I told you at like 2 o'clock in the morning, when there's only, five of us adults in the woods?
That was a little weird. I'm not going to
That was very bizarre, and nobody heard it at the time. It was only when Linz was reviewing the footage that she jumped a bloody mile and went, oh my God, listen to this, and I heard it, and I was like, oh, wow!
Exactly. But I didn't want to focus on EVPs tonight. I wanted to have a look at a different side of it, because instrumental transcommunication, ITC for short, is defined as communication by spirit beings with human beings via telephone, tape recorders, television, computers and other electronic devices. Will you settle down? Thank you. So I just had to tell the dog off. This communication can involve images projected onto TV screens or computer monitors, as well as voice transmissions recorded onto tape or electronic devices. That is what instrumental transcommunication, or ITC, stands for. Now,
can I just say one thing? Just one thing, because I know everybody likes me to try and get my alien thing in there into the show, speaking it. But I've just seen Paul Rook. That was not an alien, Paul, you Wally. It was the voice of a young girl going, I told you, I told you. It wasn't somebody going, or anything like that. It's definitely a young girl. It wasn't an alien. Aliens! There you go, done it. But it wasn't one of them.
Are you happy now? Because this is nothing to do with aliens. I've got him off aliens again this week, guys.
That was. I don't know about that.
Well,
because you've seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where they communicate through electronic instruments.
Okay, well, that's a whole different show. UFOs communicating through electronics. But tonight we're talking about the spirit world. So anyway, first of all, it started me off down the power drainage thing. So I wanted to have a look at this in a little bit more depth, because it's a little bit fascinating. Now, I found a case.
Sorry, that's our paranormal pooch making a lot of noise.
Honestly, the dogs are really feisty tonight. So anyway, I found a case, a really strange case, one that was I do love a strange case, I have to say.
I'm reading about this, actually.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting one. Now, this is the case of Jill and Liz Rich. Now, this happened back in 1995. Okay? And
can you name the village in Wales, up in the Brecon Beacons where they come from?
You read my mind, because I was going to actually ask you to do that for me.
Oh, David Thomas, you bloody fool. I come from Halfanog.
Say it again for us.
Halfanog.
That's the one. Okay, now do you want to tell us a little bit about this story?
Well, basically it was their electric bill, because I can remember this being on the news and reading about it and everything, but their bill for the last quarter, I think it was, of £750, and bear in mind this is back in 95, then either they're wired up to the lateral grid or they're growing some serious herbage in their attic, but they worked it out that if they'd had all their appliances were running 24 hours a day, they wouldn't have even run up a bill quarter of the size of that. So we don't know what is using the electricity. All we know is it isn't us.
That's true. And like you say, they had an extraordinarily large bills.
It was silly.
Incredibly silly.
Really, really, really silly. I mean, it's like when you get large telephone bills and you haven't done it. I've had a few of those in a row, and it's been games that I only use on my tablet, so I know it's not been going on my phone. And I have no idea who or what or why it's being done, but it's been happening regularly for a few months now. So,
Wow. Anyway, back to Bill and Jill. No? Yeah,
put your eyebrows back down and carry on.
I know. My eyebrows are going all over the place. So, they moved into this place. It was a local landowner. So, this is like out in the sticks. It's not sort of like in a town particularly. And he's a painter. And he had the attic room as his studio. And everything was growing great. Their business was going great. Everything was going fine. But then in 1989, things started to go wrong. Now, Bill was downstairs in the toilet and he heard above him footsteps in the hall above him. And he said they were like a man with hobnail boots stamping on the floorboards. Now, bearing in mind, they're in the middle of nowhere, in a, barn conversion back in the 80s. Mindset about activity back then was very different to how we view it today. Because what they were saying is that the reason that they had these massive bills was because it coincided with the time that the activity started in the house.
That's right, house. Yes.
You know?
You look like you're lost for words there, so, just house. But bear in mind, it was a barn conversion, and it was also using material from the old abandoned farmhouse that it was adjoined to, so it could have had something travel with it.
There's lots of other things, things they didn't look into then that we probably would do now, in all honesty. I mean, their bills started, one was £750 for a quarter, £512 for the next quarter. I mean, these are massive, massive bills for the time of year that it was. Now, I love the fact they went to their electricity company. The company just dismissed it out of hand, basically, and they just said, you've got to pay it. That's what your meter's showing. We don't know. We're not even bothered about looking into this. So the next step, the logical next step, I have to say, they called in a load of psychics. Loads of them. From all different shapes and walks of life.
All different shapes of psychics?
Yeah, all sorts. Trances were entered into, all sorts of tongues were spoken, lots and weird explanations were given to them. I mean, one apparently latched onto local gossip that the last man to be hung in Brecon murdered his victim in the abandoned farmhouse next door and reckoned it was the murderer or his victim doing the haunting. I mean, really jumping onto, things that they automatically assuming, links with spirit world that may not have been there. Do you know what I mean?
I like that other one to do with the alchemist. I think that's a really, wow, what on earth made you come up with that one?
Well, they told Bill he was being pursued by the relatives of a 16th century alchemist he had murdered in a previous life.
Yeah. Oh, it sounds like the Sooty Show came to his house.
Remember the time, though. This is 1985. Okay, this timing is all very, very important in tonight's show. I'm just going to keep an eye out for timings. Okay. And an American evangelist explained that Bill had been chosen by the Antichrist to direct evil spirits up from where the ley lines crossed, which just happened to be in the downstairs toilet, to signal
don't use that one again.
To signal the end of the world. I mean, seriously?
So I take it when he sits on the toilet, that's his trumpet of doom sounding.
You could say that.
Yeah, exactly. I've just had a curry. No, demons are coming up the pan.
Anyway, they then decided that they didn't want to deal with anybody from the spiritual psychic world anymore. It's funnily enough.
I'm not surprised, really, after that.
Funnily enough.
You're going to fart demons, mate, just to tell you.
Oh, dear. But then the bills still kept coming and they were forced to pay them. And they went back to the electricity company at that time. And then the last inspector called and asked Bill to go around the house to ensure every electrical appliance was switched off. However, the little meter thing that goes round and round was still going round and round. So he showed the guy that nothing was on. And the guy said he'd never seen anything like it. So, anyway, what they ended up doing was they ended up having to go to a solicitor, and it was a case that, they had to go to a solicitor because it was getting ridiculous. Now, I love this. The solicitor said, the law generally does not take account of the spirit world. I didn't mention in my letters to Swallock possible psychic causes. My contention is that it was beholden on them as suppliers to explain how the richest electricity usage can work out to be £7 a day, when the company itself admits it should be closer to 40 pence. I love that. You can imagine the solicitor's face when this guy is sitting in his office saying, actually, I've got ghosts in my house that are draining my electricity or using my electricity. And what they're using it for is just to stomp around a lot and make bad smells. And apparently I've got a demon vortex in my downstairs toilet because it's heralding the end of the world.
Be honest, if I was that solicitor and he'd just come out with all that and it's a huge electricity bill, I would have said to him, okay, so you're saying that and you've got a huge electricity bill. Well, you need to stop smoking that stuff. Really do. Get it out of your loft, get rid of it, burn it. Don't stand close to the bonfire because you're going to come out with more stories.
Now, I looked into this because I thought they can't surely have just gone for the electricity company and then gone to the spiritualist way. There's a huge leap. They must have looked into many other... They must have done. But nothing was put out there. No, there was no other reasons or other explanations that they tried to look into. They literally seemed to jump from the electricity company saying there's no explanation to spirits. Now, I know they were getting activity in the house, which is what made them make that leap, but surely logic and common sense could have kicked in. I mean, I know it's 1985, but really?
Yeah. Faulty meter by any chance?
No idea.
Actually, I know that people back then used to control, because a lot of it in the paper, people used to be able to control the spinning wheel with magnets to control their bill. Not me personally, never done that, but I know that people were controlling the spinning wheel with magnets. So maybe somebody had Jimmy rigged it and completely buggered it up and done it the wrong way, and that sped it up. I don't know, but I'm not saying they did, but maybe previous tenants or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, because I couldn't find any more information out about it. But I did also just try to find whether or not that location had any further activity since. And again, it's almost like the story was out there, fell off the face of the earth.
See, I always think if there's nothing previous and nothing since, it's not a case of little tiny woman coming in and going, "This house has been cleansed." I don't think it's that at all. I think maybe they came and changed the meter. Possibly.
Who knows? So anyway, trying to find verifiable facts on this kind of activity is incredibly difficult. What? Verifiable.
Verifiable. Especially with Sweden. Yes.
I know, it's Friday night. Okay. It's very difficult. It's incredibly difficult because, you know, you target different areas. I then went on to, after the power thing, fair enough, that was about the only case I could find on power drainage of any note.
I just point out to James Steele, we're not talking about using a DeLorean here. God.
Is he not listening to the show?
He's not. He's Doc Brown needing 1.2 megawatts for time travel and 70 miles an hour. Yeah, I can't see a farmhouse doing 70 miles an hour.
Maybe they were doing tests like that in the neighbourhood and they were using his electricity supply. There's just as wacky an explanation as opening a vortex to hell in your, downstairs toilet. Yeah. I have to say, it's just as good a theory.
Yeah, I tell you what, can you imagine if it really genuinely was a vortex in that pan? And just as the demon's looking up, he's come and sat down after a bad curry. Reckon that demon just went, "No, I'm covered in more than glory. No, let's find another doorway."
Yeah, let's go to a different portal because, this vortex clearly isn't working. So anyway, I then moved on to telephones because I thought, I have seen loads on my social media feed about spirits contacting people through telephones.
They normally ring you up and ask you if you've claimed PPI before.
Loads. You'd think I'd found loads, wouldn't you? Could I?
No.
No, not really. Nothing verifiable. Loads of urban myths, but this is it leads on. Another wacky story for you guys out there. Now, this is 2008, a guy called Frank Jones. Now, I love this one. Right, I absolutely adored this one. Right, now this guy has had a reputation of poltergeist activity, even to the point that he had an exorcism on a malevolent spirit he had dubbed The Thing. Just curious as to what year the movie The Thing was released, which had already 84? Driven... Sorry?
84, something like that.
Was it?
I think it was the early 80s anyway.
Well, this is 1995. Well, he was obliged to leave his home because the spirit, this malevolent spirit, had already driven apparently one terrified family from the house. And so they ended up having like a bit of an exorcism in the house and blah, blah, blah. Same old, sleep paralysis, all taps turning on, smells, breathing in their ears, and for the family, I'm not belying that the experience for the family must have been quite terrifying. And one of the quotes that was said was, "You think people are exaggerating until you experience it." And she was home alone one evening, suddenly heard these footsteps coming up the stairs. They went into her dad's bedroom, and as she heard all the cupboards banging open, she thought it was burglars. It sounded like burglars. So in came an exorcist who cleansed the property of the spirit that was trapped between the two worlds. And everything calmed
this house
down.
has been cleansed?
I don't know. I know, it sounds like poltergeist all over, doesn't it? Now, unfortunately, things took a turn for the worst, and the Joneses suffered the death of their son from a brain tumour, and then his wife passed 3 months later from a heart attack. Now, when they buried Sadie, they buried her with her mobile phone.
Oh, I remember this one. Yes.
Kind of asking for trouble, I feel.
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah.
Anyway, they started to get phone calls on their mobiles and text messages. And then they used to get like the smell of cigarettes that she used to smoke and the smell of her perfume. Now, they believed it was Sadie because she always had her mobile with her. And they, like I said, they did bury her mobile with her because of this. Now, there have been messages with words Sadie would say, but I couldn't find any verifiable direct communications that Sadie made. So I couldn't find any of said text messages.
I remember this coming out in the Sunday Sport, and we all know what a reliable source of information that newspaper is.
Well, a lot of these stories, when I started digging deep, were from the rag newspapers.
Yeah, exactly. But the trouble is,
when you start digging, do you know what I mean? But the other thing is about that, my mobile phone, I could probably get 2 days on my battery usage at tops.
Yeah, but phones back then, we're talking like Nokia bricks, and you could charge that up, and it would last you a good couple of weeks, 3 weeks, something like that.
But again, it doesn't say how long this went on for or anything like that, you know?
But also the other thing,
details. There were no this is what highlights this for me. There were no details on these. It's just like they put it out there, and there's no details. You can't find
As you can
them.
tell, ladies and gentlemen, we're like Sharky and George of the paranormal world, investigating everything.
Well, it annoys me because I go, right, okay, so let's find the messages. Let's find what phone it was. Let's find... Do you know what I mean? Let's. How long a span did this go on for? Dates. So when did this start and when did this end? Does it still happen? Is the house still having activity? Because if it happened before the people were there, they had it exercised. What happened to the activity afterwards? Apart from Sadie, did they experience it? Or do they still live there? Questions. But no, you can't find any.
There's also the other thing, that electronic device in a coffin that, let's face it, is going to get a bit humid and damp inside. And it's not going to take that long before the dampness starts to get in. Surely that would affect it as well.
I love the way you're going with dampness rather than body fluids.
No, I thought I'd be polite. Affect the electrics, you know? So that maybe, I don't know, either that or... see, things like that when it concerns... There's a lot of stories out there about phones being very...
Well, this is what I was finding. Loads of stories. All of them. No names, no models, no exact circumstances, just very, very vague, very, very urban mythy. Do you know what I mean? Nothing verifiable. And this is the problem I came across on every single ITC communication regarding computers, telephones, or phone usage. I mean, we've all heard, my phone rang and there was no one there and it was really staticky. And when I looked on my caller ID, it said 000 or number withheld or, something. It's just not verifiable and it bothered me. So anyway, I then went on to computers. I gave up with telephones and went on to computers. Found an interesting case with computers. This was interesting. This in 1984. So remember, the technology back in 1984 was very, very basic.
BBC Basic.
BBC Basic. Now, this was to do with a guy called Ken Webster. Now, he had strange, archaic messages appearing on his computer in the midst of apparent, again, classical poltergeist activity. Now, Ken wrote a book, and the book about all of this was called The Vertical Plane. And, yeah, I think that sort of says it all, really. He was living with his girlfriend and, for a short period, a college friend in a cottage near Chester. Now, there are a lot more details on this. I will say that. There were a lot more details on this one. It was a little bit more like, okay, fair enough, it's starting to look good. Lots of poltergeist activity took place. You know, the same old. Stackings of objects, noises, marks on the wall, thrown objects. And apparently, allegedly, poltergeist events are relatively frequently reported around that time. But what made this...
I won't tell you what somebody else said then.
Anyway, what made this different was the appearance of direct communications in handwritten form and, unusually, other communications through a primitive computer. Now, in 1984, computers were only just appearing, and this guy had access to a primitive BBC B computer at the school.
I told you, BBC Basic.
Exactly. These machines only had around 32k of memory, a word processor on an installed chip, and the only means of saving files was to a 5.25 inch floppy disk on an external drive.
You'll know having a 5.25 inch floppy is a lot worse than having maybe a 9 inch hard drive. So, you know, computers are much better these days.
There was no networking, no modem, and definitely no internet back in that day.
No, definitely not.
Okay, so bear that in mind. Timings, guys. Remember the timings, because I go on. Anyway, the computer was accidentally left on, and apparently there was a message, a poem, on the computer. And he thought it was a joke, saved it to the disk anyway, returned the computer to school, and the poltergeist activity continued. He then borrowed a different machine, and again, it happened. But it was allegedly or seemingly to be of 17th century Elizabethan English. And
What?
Apparently so. And a 17th century Elizabethan English person was writing poetry on this basic computer.
They knew how to use a QWERTY keyboard back in the 17th century.
Apparently so.
Forsooth, what is yon keyboard in front of me? What is the word keyboard? What is keyboard? What is a keyboard?
So he took it to his linguistic colleague, who pointed out that the tone was threatening, and they thought the joke had sort of like gone to the next level.
Bad taste.
Bad taste indeed. So they wanted to catch the hoaxer, so they borrowed another computer, checked the disk for preloaded material, checked the house was secure, and left the computer in the kitchen as before. Now another message appeared in the same quirky, must be coming down with a cold.
Why didn't you have a drink of wine? That might sort you.
Oh, I think it might, love.
It might. You have a sup of wine.
Anyway, another message appeared in quirky mock Tudor style. Oh, I've gone on northern.
Birmingham, mate.
Was it Birmingham? Oh, whatever.
We're going to go quirky mock Birmingham style.
In a matter-of-fact way, over a coffee, a friend suggested to reply to said message. Well, no, Richard. He says there were probably Shakespeare sonnets stored on the computer. Having said that, they did check that. They allegedly checked that for preloaded material on this computer. Allegedly. Okay. Anyway, the reply was met with further response and a two-way communications began in earnest. Now, at the same time, his colleague linguistic investigated into the language style and pointed up a coherence and subtlety which was not easily dismissed. I don't know what really that means, but there was something that in it that he thought, well, there's something to this. Okay, but they were not perfect.
The way they spoke, the way they actually wrote it, was not as if it was in a book or something like that, as if it was somebody from there was actually saying it.
That's right. That's good. Now, I found the messages and everything on this one. It's a book written on it, so it was quite easy to find the information on this one. Now, you know, there was a BBC documentary on this as well. You know, but in the documentary, the analysis undertaken found it to be inconsistent and restrictive. There were discrepancies in the language of the time, the style it was written in, not the handwriting, but the style of the way it was written was, you know, again, inconsistent, and no explanation was found. However, it was generally considered to be a hoax. Now, who knows? I don't know. I wasn't there.
I can remember watching that on TV, and the documentary itself, to be absolutely fair to the guy, did completely rip him apart and make him look like a complete fool.
Yes. Correct.
I'm goodly friend.
And they did write a book, so they made money out of it.
Well, do you want me to read the letter out?
No, to be fair, it rambles, and I did put it into the research. And if you really, really want to know what it says, then we'll tell you. But it goes on and boring. So I kind of went
gobbledygook, isn't it?
It was a bit gobbledygooky, and you know. So again, I was going, well, oh my God, you know, of all this alleged ITC that's supposed to be going on, what is going on here? So on that note, let's take a quick break before we look at this in a little bit more depth. What do you reckon?
Oh, go on then.
Yeah, do you reckon?
Me.
Should we have a little bit of sense brought into the room by Harry?
Yeah, good morning.
Hello, Harry Price here. Good evening. If there's nothing myself and everybody else enjoy here on the other side more is the sit back and relax and listen to Parasearch Radio with its paranormal news, views and reviews from across the UK and beyond. Make sure to find out more about them on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web, whatever they are, to keep up to date with all their broadcasts throughout the week. And I hope you enjoy them as much as we do over here. Hello? Is anybody there?
Welcome back to the Dark Mirror Show. I am Kerry Greenaway and I'm joined by my lovely Mark Manley again. And before the break, we talked about some cases, weird and wonderful cases that we found regarding ITC. Every time I say that, I then forget what it actually means. I know what it means, but I always forget the proper terminology. I'll probably be slapped by Ashley Nibb at some point. Instrumental transcommunication, that's the one. So.
Yeah, but look, I've just been reading this letter, right?
Right, okay,
and I'm reading it, and I'm actually reading it, and in my head, it, to me, just this first bit alone says it's somebody pulling a fast one. Right.
Okay, go on. You read it because you're dying to.
I'll only read out the first, whatever you want to call it, chapter.
Go on then.
I must needs say, how come of this, that there are many things for which I have no reckoning. Me think of it, that if thou cannot tell thee for what art in mine home, then I can nae more help yow than if mine wits had gone. But it's this bit here. I hath no kinfolk to find, so in other words, don't try and look for me, I ain't got no family. Mine with was wretched with thy pestilence, and thy Lord didst take her soul and her unborn child. And mine fam, or family, 'tis humble, but it have a pretty parcel o' land. It hath red stone footings and clean rushes on mine beaten floor. In other words, he's got a house which has got their version of a carpet in it. But it's the fact that he was saying, I have no family for you to find, so don't try and find. Mm-hmm. There would be records. If she died of the plague or something like that, and pestilence, just illness, 1517, then there would be some sort of record.
You think?
You think so, yeah.
But like we said, the BBC documentary literally ripped it.
Yeah, it did. That teared him to bits.
Absolutely teared him to bits. Now, so went on, as you do, desperately trying to find something credible in all of this. And I found this.
Yeah.
Right.
Your spidey senses started to tingle.
They did. At this point, my little spidey senses were starting to flex. And I was thinking, hang on a minute. I can't find anything modern, tangible. I can find lots of urban myths. I can find lots of this allegedly happened to me. But no facts, no names, no dates, no verifiable facts.
It's like when
I
sent you
couldn't
that
find
message.
any. And I believe you me, I spent a long time researching this. Okay.
It's like when I sent you that message and told you where gremlins originally came from.
Yes, well, I even looked into that because I was clutching at straws. So what did I do? I do what I do best. And I go, oh my God, men of the paranormal field. Men, do you know it is? Help this
Ladies and
poor
gentlemen,
damsel in distress.
I have to say, I normally do the research, but for the last few weeks, Kerry, bless her, she's been doing it for us because we've just been up to our eyeballs with packing and sorting out jobs and everything else that goes with it. So, to be fair, she's done a really great job these last few weeks. And as soon as we moved and sorted, I'll go back to doing the research and give her a break. But, yeah, whenever she does get stuck, she, first of all, goes, no! And then secondly goes, fridge! And then goes, thirdly, wine. In that order.
And then wait for all of the people that I know, and I'm going to list their names because bless them, they come through every single time. I messaged Mark, obviously. Then I messaged Paul Rook, who's in our chat room tonight. I know, I'm sorry, James, I am very sexist. I did go to the men, but that could be because I like to have a little flirt as well.
Oh, no, really?
I know, it's really hard to believe.
Oh.
I then sent a little message to the tech guy, my little tech guy, Carl Hutchinson. Kev Kerr, Para-Rationalise, I sent a little message to him. I sent a little message to Ashley Nibb. I even sent a message over the pond to Jay.
We
Jay
like Jay.
Lynch. Okay? Now, bless them. They all come back to me with various things. And I'm going to...
Okay.
So now I'm handing it over to the lads, because the lads helped me out on this one.
Harry, just 1 second. You are a paranormal tartlet. Okay?
I just prefer paranormal hussy.
Oh, okay. You're paranormal hussy or husky?
Husky, hussy, either or.
All right. All covered in fur. Yeah, okay.
Anyway, Kev Kerr, Para-Rationalise. I thought I'm going to get some sense out of him, surely. Right? He's going to be able to answer my questions. And bless him, he did. He came back. He went, have a look at this guy, Cal Cooper. He wrote a book called Telephone Calls from the Dead, which led on from some research that had been done way back in the day. But other than reading his book, which I just frankly didn't get time for, you know, and I did message Cal Cooper, and he hasn't come back to me on this. But then having a look at his book, I'm going to read you the synopsis for the book. It says, examines the fascination and presents a selection of the leading research into paranormal acoustics together with an in-depth review of the equipment and techniques that are used by researchers and investigators. It explores the physics and the psychology of sound and its association with the paranormal. Chapters in the book include infrasound, electronic voice phenomenon, seance tapping and other ghostly sounds that encouraged a multidisciplined approach to the subject. So looking at that, I don't think it was going to give me the information I wanted. Can spirits communicate through TVs, phones or computers? That's what I wanted to know. And I don't think he would be able to do that. And I say he didn't come back to me. So naughty Cal Cooper. Don't worry, I will annoy you until you give me the answers I want.
Many universities, the ones that do the paranormal studies, they've done lots of studies into white noise, both on radio and on TV, and surprising results have been found.
Well, white noise itself, we'll come on to that in a second, because then Ashley Nibb, bless him, comes back to me. Classic answer.
Yeah.
I love Ashley. He always does this to me. He goes, it could possibly be a form of telekinesis from a person desperate to hear from a recently passed loved one based in a deep subconscious level. So basically your subconscious is making these events happen rather than a spirit trying to contact you.
One thing I will say is, how on earth is your subconscious sending you a text?
But your brain will work in the way it knows. And if your modern technologies, computers or mobile phone text data, it's a possibility. You can't deny that that's not a bad theory.
I will say one thing. He's almost on there with the theory, the near-death experiences of soldiers, or soldiers that did die and they go boom and appear before their family, literally around the time of their death. It could be that sort of thing, similar thing.
It could be, but that's what Ashley Nibb came back with. So again, an interesting theory. So then I went tech. I had a lengthy conversation with the amazing Cole Hutchinson. And my questions, I mean, bless him, he's so patient with me because he knows how bad I am. Bad with tech. I am. Now, this actually
she is.
I am bad with tech. So, and he's so patient with me, Carl. Thank you so much for spending hours talking to me about this and answering my inane, stupid questions. He looks at me as if to say, really? Are you that thick? Right, so in regards to the television, lack of stories. I couldn't find, other than urban myths and personal experiences, and again, non-verifiable, okay, post 2009.
Actually, I think he's onto something there, yeah.
No, I was onto something.
No, well, yeah.
I said to him, why can't I find anything modern with iPhones and Samsungs and, the Intel processing chip things and the crystals that are in it and the boosting EMFs that they must be pumping out, all that sort of thing. And, no, Paul, I can't remember your theory, sorry. I said, is this something to do with the signal transfer? Now, back in 2009, if you remember, we transferred over from analogue to digital, and everyone had to make sure their TVs were, into digital and not analogue. And that happened. That actually happened in 2009. So I wondered if there was a link between pre-2009 and post-2009. Because, like I say, I couldn't find any verifiable stories.
What I was going to say is back then, analog TV, any radio signal could interfere with it. Because I was on the CB for years and years and years, because as you know, I can talk the hind leg of a donkey, and I used to have to put in things called low-pass filters, because otherwise my CB, the one in the car or the one at home, would interfere with all the TVs in the area. So I know back then lots of people were getting, inverted commas, ghosts in the machine on the TV when they could hear people coming through the radio. You used to be able to pick up the emergency services on your radio, for God's sake,
Yeah. I agree. Sorry, I'm just replying to Paul.
He's going to turn it off to listen to Whale's song. Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Rook is sort of our boss in Trident Paranormal, but he's also like a good mate as well. And if you knew Paul, he's going to be reclining on a sofa or a bed in a toga eating KFC. So,
Right, so I said, so what was the difference? Why allegedly could spirit communicate through analogue but not through digital? Because with all the plasmas and the LCDs, surely we should be getting activity through those kind of forms as well. Now, the answer to that was all analogue was done via airwaves.
Right.
And modern technology is done via signals bounced off satellites or fibre optics. And the theory of the white noise is actually an analogue TV that you can detune. Now, this is something that is used as an experiment in the paranormal field, the white noise thing, which actually came out of a movie. Now, I got told that the movie was based on true facts.
It was actually based on an experiment in, I want to say San Francisco, but I'm probably wrong.
I think you're right, because I looked into that too. And was the film White Noise based on true facts? And again, much to my astonishment, I couldn't find any verifiable facts that it was. It was just based on an experiment, not the whole movie scenario of somebody trying to contact his dead daughter through a TV.
Oh, no, it was based on the experiments, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so that was interesting. Now, Carl did talk about an experiment where you get an analog TV, you detune it, and what you do is you actually place a video recorder in front of it, and then you encourage communication that way. And there has been interesting results through that.
See, that, to me, I'd have a go at that, because that sounds very much, that's just like a grander version of Spirit Box session, I think. But that does sound like a cool idea. I've seen it done. There's a few videos out there, there's a few universities who've done it, and it can be done, but it is very much like a Spirit Box session.
Very much so. So that's sort of where we sort of went with that one. Now, modern TVs like plasma and stuff like that can't be detuned very easily. There probably is a way to do it, but it's not easily done, which is why analog was always like the favoured method to do it. So I then said, right, okay, let's ignore TVs because I can't really go any further with that. Then I went into telephones, modern telephones. Again, telephones are all done by signals that are being bounced off of satellites now, mobile phones, or in-house phones that are generally through fibre optic cables. But how many investigations do you hear of they heard a phone ring, an old-style phone ring?
Yes, there's been quite a few cases of that.
And that's been recorded on, voice recorders and stuff like that. You can hear an old style, the old,
To be fair, do you know what is actually the most amount of hauntings that involve hearing old phones? It's a useless bit of information for you. Australia.
Ooh.
Yeah, Australia. I have no idea why, but the most amount of recorded EVPs involving old phones or witness statements where they've heard old phones, like we're talking 1930s, 40s telephones, 1950s, is Australia.
Ooh. Oh, I gave a little whistle there too.
And you did. And Richard Clement says it's all getting a bit too chemical, technical. Next week, Kerry, can we do a show about other experts in the paranormal?
Well, this is when I got told I may be going too deep into my subjects by Carl Hutchinson. Because we went on to a different subject completely, and he went, no, you're going to scare the public if you go down that route.
I was going to say, I tell you what, guys, if you saw the research that we both do, that has to get whittled down into enough for a show. I've sent you pages and pages and pages and pages of research, and we've had to narrow down and cut into about 4 or 5 shows.
Yeah.
So yes, there are some experts out there.
I wouldn't go as far as experts, well researched. So anyway, going on, I then looked at EMF, because obviously phones and TVs and computers and all that emit EMF. So could it be this? That's, bearing in mind we did a show on EMF a few weeks ago with Paul Rook. Could this be the reason? And he said, well, surely, that's going to enhance it, so there should be more activity. If it's to do with EMF, there should be more activity, because basically these things are all EMF pumps. There should be more verifiable, things, surely.
I use an I will say one thing that EM pumps are good for. I don't know if you remember on a couple of the investigations we've been on where I've had camcorders get wiped. The battery's drained. I've put an EM pump on, and we've had some good results from it. So, they do help.
Who knows? Now, Paul, let's go back to Paul, because bless him, he's just messaged me to remind me of his particular theory, just to put this out there. Again, another theory. It could be that if a patient or a person reports hearing voices coming from the TV or the phone without ringing and things like that, it could be, it's almost like an Ashley Nibb kind of vibe. It could be perceived as schizophrenia or a form of mental projection.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm just staring into the camera at her, and I've just got a derp face. That's all. You can't see it, but it looks good.
It could be. Who knows? Again, it's that mental effect on your environment, rather than it being a paranormal, spirit person doing it. It could be your mind doing it. So it's a possibility. Now, one thing I did find was I found an article that quoted a guy called Tony Cornell, who apparently was a leading member of the SPR, a parapsychologist, and he's quoted as saying, Will you sit down?
Stop that dancing dog!
Oh my God, he's having a right little moan tonight. He was quoted as saying, until a few years ago, they'd received reports of 2 new ghosts every week. Now we're receiving none, not a dicky bird. But the decline exactly mirrors the increasing use of mobile phones. And now I couldn't find the date he quoted that, but he actually died in 2010. So this is like pre-2010.
Yeah.
So I think it's between the 2009-2010 era. So is there a link between the analogue going to digital as to why that happened? Or is it just education and knowledge of what is going on in the paranormal, unexplained realm, thanks to the internet, thanks to more people having access to going out and doing investigations and, say, power of knowledge? Is that why the reporting of ghosts, particularly in this way, I was absolutely fascinated to find that I couldn't find any cases of this post 2008. You know, it was absolutely incredible. As I say, loads and loads of urban mythology, but other than that, nothing.
What I will say is, you think that obviously we've been going for thousands of years, people have been dying for thousands of years, people have been passing over thousands of years. They've been contacting people in the only way they could. And then there came the advent of the radio and TV and stuff. They can possibly tune their energies into that and come through that. They're still dying the same way. They're still communicating the same way. Our technology's moved on, and because we're using more and more technology, they're able to get through to us less and less and less because they cannot get through on that type of technology.
Or they don't exist, and it is all to do with our minds.
Well, I don't know. Some are, some aren't. Well, I mean, we're paranormal investigators, so, I mean, we've been to some places where there's definitely something. As we all know, when you go on paranormal investigation, 90% of everything you go on, you can either explain away or nothing happens.
I know.
Or somebody walks out and goes, hello, and scares you, you know.
I thought when I first started this subject, I thought it's going to be a breeze. It's going to be a walk in the park. I'm going to find loads of different cases. We're going to have, you know, a good look at different cases and, you know, really examine it. But I was shocked as to where this took me on this one. Now, the lovely Ashley sent me a link to a guy called Michael D. Maggie, M-A-G-E-E. He's on YouTube, and he has got loads and loads of videos of alleged activity occurring in his home and actually communicating with him through a computer. But there are so many problems, and he's been debunked because for all the tech that he's got, he fails to cover some of the very basics. Like, if somebody is using a computer to communicate with you on a regular basis through, you know, alleged spirit is using your computer, then I would have that cameraed up.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd have it so you could see that there was nobody sitting at the desk. I'd have it on the actual keyboard. I'd have it on the screen. I would have this rigged up so it could not be argued. Do you know what I mean? And he doesn't. Basic.
You'd have scientific conditions, basic laboratory conditions.
You would have to. If this is truly happening, then you'd have to. He has been called out and debunked time and time again for somebody who has allegedly... He's got a huge following, this guy. I mean, he's absolutely huge following. But when you look into him, all I could find was debunked. Why doesn't he do this? Why doesn't he do that? Why has this happened? Why hasn't that happened? He's clearly got 3 or 4 cameras. If he's getting communication through his computer, rig all those cameras up around his computer screen. He doesn't do that.
I mean, to be absolutely fair, it's unfortunately it's when people do things like that, it does cast a bad light on genuine paranormal investigators like us, and it also brings doubt in our heads as well. Where we yourself, we sit there and think, well, is that real? Is it? No.
I mean, I'm not taking out the human experiences. People have experienced stuff like this, you know, phone calls that they've had. I'm not undermining those experiences for those people. What I wanted to get to really was why. Why is there no, as I say, when you go, I had that experience, will you lie down?
Oh, they don't normally say, I had that experience, will you lie down? That's for another show. So stick with the script, love.
Sorry. He's wandering around. He's scratching and wandering around, and oh my God.
I'm sorry, I can't help it.
Oh my God. No, what I wanted to get to was verifiable information, not just personal experiences. I wanted to find out. See, this is where I fall down every single time and end up going too deep into the subjects we cover, because I want to know why. Why does that happen? What could it be that causes that? Do you know what I mean? Personal experiences are great, but without verifiable information and proof to back that up, you've got nothing.
Well, to be absolutely honest, I mean, it's like there is so much out. Every single show we do, when we pick a topic and we say, right, we're going to do a show on that, by the time we've looked into it and done the research, whether it's you, whether it's me, as we've done with this one again, you just can't do it all in one show. So we've got to do a two-part show, because this originally started off as the Ghost in the Machine, Gremlins and stuff. And then when I pointed out where Gremlins originally came from, there's so much stuff out there about that. It's like, well, we better do a two-part show, wouldn't it? So,
well, so this leads us on to next week's show.
Yeah.
Next week, we're actually going to have a look at...
Transition, I did that really nicely then.
I saw that. I took that. I'm running with that. So next week, what we're going to do is we're going to look at... we're going to look at spirits in the sky. We've gone from Ghosts in the Machine. We're now we're doing Spirits in the Sky.
All the hippies are going to be joining in.
We are. We're going to be rocking it out with Spirits in the Sky. And we're going to look at things like Gremlins that happened in World War II. I found out some information about that, but I'm not going to talk to you about that this week, because we're going to do that next week. And we're going to look at ghost planes, and we're going to look at that kind of thing, because there are more going on in the skies other than UFOs. So we thought we'd have a little look at that next week and go on into that area. Now, guess what's happening tomorrow, Mark?
Sorry?
Guess what's happening tomorrow?
Go on, tell us all. What's happening tomorrow? You look like Stevie Wonder at the moment, but carry on.
Tomorrow night, we've got a little pop-up show going on.
Have we?
Allegedly so.
Fine, because I'm at a barbecue tomorrow.
Oh, well, you're not going to be on the pop-up show, but me and Paul Rook are saddos that stay in on a Saturday night. Got nothing better to do, so we went, should we do a show? Well, going on from last week, if you missed the pop-up show last Saturday night, we did How You Could Survive a Horror Movie. We like to bring a little bit of fun on a Saturday night to you guys out there.
If we're back, I will join in.
I know you will. Well, this week we're going to actually have a look at how you can survive a zombie apocalypse.
Somebody had to do it, and whose idea was this by chance?
To be fair, it came out of the horror show movie. Because there was crossovers, and we was like, no, we're doing horror. We're not doing zombie, we're doing horror. So next week, we're going to... not next week. This week, tomorrow night, Saturday night, we're doing a pop-up show, how you can survive a zombie apocalypse. Next Friday night on the Dark Mirror Show, we're looking at Spirits in the Sky. I'm getting all confused. I'm doing far too many shows.
I knew next week.
It's crazy. Sunday night is the Spirit Dimension. I am talking to Kitty Janus, who wrote a book, who is absolutely awesome. I read her book.
Kitty.
Spirits of the Dead is she wrote, and listen to that interview. She is absolutely amazing. Her view on paranormal investigations. She works in a very spiritual way, but also in a very scientific way in the field, and did the RMS Queen Mary on a regular basis.
Oh, wow.
30 minutes she lives from the RMS Queen Mary.
Oh, look. I'll tell you what, was it Queen Mary 2? That's in Hong Kong Harbour as well, because my mum and dad have been on that. Because it was they turned it into a floating museum. Well, sort of partially sunk floating museum.
And then we're back into next week. Monday, we've got the Encore show, the Parasearch UK Radio Encore show, which was fascinating this week. We talked about the Singapore theory and how Jay and Teresa took it to the next level on their investigation at Ashmore Estate. That's on Monday. Tuesday, Paul Rook is talking about Gnosticism with...
Sorry?
Gnosticism.
Gnosticism.
Tune in to listen to hear all about that one. Wednesday night we have got the lovely Penny Morgan. She's talking about Coventry Museum, I think it is. Thursday we're back on the Paramania show at midnight, and then Friday we're talking spirits in the sky. So join us all throughout the week. We have got shows going live from 9 p.m. every single night. Don't forget, guys, we're also on YouTube. So if you miss any of the shows, if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, it automatically downloads it and give you a notification that a new show has been up, so you can listen through there too. Thank you all for being in the chat room. Thank you, Richard, James, Paul. Nice to see you in our chat room for a change.
It makes a change, doesn't it?
I'm in there. You're in there. We've had a great show. Thoroughly enjoyed tonight's show.
Get your words out.
I know. It's a Friday night. What do you expect? Thoroughly enjoyed researching this one. And so it always takes me down areas that I never expect to go when I do the research, when I finally do some research.
Hey.
And on that note,
after luck next week, I might be speaking with a northern accent, so you never know.
You might be, because you're going to be up in Yorkshire, aren't you?
I am. I'm moving 300 miles away, yes.
I'm going to miss my market.
No, because you'll be coming up to see us, and I'm going to be running a particular Trident thing for Mr. Rook up in Yorkshire once we're up there as well. So I'll be back in the paranormal field.
Yes, you certainly are, and it's about time.
Yep, love.
It's about time, darling. Anyway,
it's about time too, isn't it? Yes.
It's time to go. It's time to go, Chuck. So on that note, let's say good night and bid you all a farewell.
Night. Hey, crumpets for everybody.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to join us for more shows throughout the week. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and the World Wide Web to keep up to date with all the shows right here on Parasearch Radio.